Welcome to the weekly show of Classroom Without Walls. My name is I'm the host of this weekly show. And join me live is my friend Ben Seller, and who is the content marketing lead at Coschedule. Personally, I'm a big fan of Coschedule, and let me know in the comment section if any of you guys join us live right now or watching the replay are also fans of Coschedule. I think Ben would love to see that. And today we are actually discussing something popular and trending, and I don't really know much about. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. That is Agile marketing. And we are actually live right now on LinkedIn. Hello, everyone, LinkedIn. And we're also live on Facebook, on Periscope, and YouTube. So let us know where you are joining us from geographically and social media wise. I love our global community. And so today we are discussing everything you need to know regarding Agile marketing. And so as I mentioned earlier, Ben is the content marketing lead at CoSchedule, and he has written extensively about marketing. I read actually quite a few of your blog articles. I love your writing. And his expertise includes SEO, social media, content strategy. So thank you so much for joining us live, and welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be your guest here today.
Oh, awesome. And so do you want to add anything to my very brief introduction?
I can add one thing. I'm still getting used to this myself. I had a small job title change from content marketing lead to inbound marketing lead, which it's a really minor, that means nothing to anybody.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
So at CoSchedule, I head up all of our content marketing efforts, and get into some of our social and email marketing a little bit too. Just really guiding the strategy and executing a lot of our content, and
That's awesome. So thank you so much. We already have quite a few people joining us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, everyone. And let us know in the comment section where you are going to join, where you are joining us from, social media wise, and in terms of geographic location. So let's get started. Are you ready, Ben?
Yeah, I am totally ready.
Okay, great. As I mentioned, and also I discovered as I was promoting the show, and quite a few of my friends, they were like, oh, what is Agile marketing? They didn't really know much about this. And I personally don't know much about this either. So what were some of the triggers in the marketing space that give birth to Agile marketing?
Sure. So that's a great place to start. So Agile marketing spun off from Agile software development, which is, some people will call Agile either a framework or a methodology. But I think it's maybe easiest to understand it as it's just kind of a system for organizing people and teams and managing projects. And what really spurred it on with marketers, or why marketers started to kind of adopt some Agile, project management principles from software development, was because just the old traditional ways of doing marketing, where you have one or two big campaigns a year, and then you maybe measure those at the end, was this kind of starting to not work, just with the rapid change of just industry and marketing and technology, and the way that marketers operate and the way that companies communicate with their customers has just started to change so much, to the extent that for a lot of companies and a lot of different verticals, just that old way of doing things just doesn't work. Also, as anybody who's worked in marketing for any length of time can tell you, sometimes marketing departments, and particularly marketing agencies, can be pretty chaotic, pretty busy. So Agile, it kind of helps you kind kind of give some order to that chaos a little bit, and just get better organized. And so I think that's probably the most concise answer.
Yeah.
But that's really where Agile kind of took root, and how it kind of became something that marketers started to borrow.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So why do you think marketers need to pay attention to this?
Sure. I would say it's really hard to narrow it down to just like one reason. But I would say that marketers would really do well to pay attention to Agile marketing, just due to just the sheer number of problems that it solves and everything that it empowers marketers to do. With Agile, it's much easier to organize your work, improve your collaboration with other team members and with other departments, and ultimately to get more work done more quickly. And oftentimes with that, like actually getting better results out of that work too, and just ultimately feeling better about what you're creating, and just like even just how like your work days.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned the better results. Many of us join us live right now, we're looking for that kind of benchmark. So like before we actually started going live, you shared with me at Coschedule that you guys have been applying this approach. So maybe you can share with us some of the big, like maybe outcomes or benefits that applying Agile marketing has benefited Coschedule.
Yeah, for sure. So Coschedule has been around since I think the tail end of 2013. So it's about 5.5 or 6 years. And I've been here for about 3.5 of those years. And in that time, Coschedule has been able to achieve, like pretty incredible traffic. Like we get over 1 billion hits a month on our blog and our website. Our email list is over 800,000 contacts. We have a pretty substantial social media following as well. We've also, we've really grown the business and scaled the business like at a pretty rapid pace in that time too. Last year we placed, I think it was 153 on the Inc. 5000 list.
Wow! Congratulations! That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Not that I'm solely responsible, for achieving that outcome. But I mean, like all the success that this company has had, like we can tie back to, every marketing success we've had, we can definitely tie back to Agile for sure. But also just the way that we build our product and the way that we run the company too.
Wow, I love this. This is such a great way to start. And so before we move on to our next discussion point, I just want to say a quick hello to so many of us, to Melissa, Krista, and Vicky, Hassam. And we have almost 30 people join us live on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. Oh, by the way, my dear friend Peter is helping me monitoring people's questions and comments in the comment section. So please feel free to tag him if you have any question that I missed. I definitely want to answer some questions from the live audience. And thank you so much, Peter. So this is such a great way to get started. So please define Agile marketing for us, Ben.
To define it?
Yeah, definition. Yeah.
Sure. So there's probably like a few different ways, or like a multitude of ways that like you could define it. But like a definition that makes sense to me is to think of Agile marketing as being a framework or methodology for organizing teams and managing projects in a way that streamlines workflows, enables better collaboration, and makes it possible to hit deadlines more consistently. And that last point on deadlines is pretty important, which is being able to ship more work on time, really being like the key benefit. It's built around the ideas of rapid iteration and make data-driven decision making. And breaking down silos between teams.
Yeah. This is great. So maybe you can just try to help us understand this a bit deeper by walking us through an example. And so do you have any good examples you can share with us? I did get some articles. Do you want me to share the screen, or you can just talk through the examples? That's whatever is easier for you.
Sure. Yeah, you could certainly pull up one of those articles. Like I think you'd mentioned you'd looked at our Agile marketing guide. But I can pretty easily just like talk through an example.
Okay.
So I think like with everything that we've explained about Agile so far, it probably just sounds like really abstract and just kind of like hard to pin down what any of this actually is. So at a really high level, I think it might be helpful to just kind of like walk through like what a work week might look like for an Agile marketing team, or even like a work day. So if you had a team that was working, with Agile marketing, when you start your day, you'd have a morning meeting, like most often like a morning meeting called a stand-up, which is pretty quick meeting. You get your whole team together into one room or into like one space. Everybody stands up because you don't want to get like too comfortable because it's going to be like a quick meeting. So you don't want people like lounging around and taking too much time. But you give yourself a 15-minute time limit for everybody in the room to share what they are going to work on today, what they worked on yesterday, and if they have any roadblocks or anything that is preventing them from getting their work done. Usually you'll have this is also called like stand-ups, or sometimes called like morning scrums. That's another word you might come across. But generally, like you'll have somebody like running this meeting or like facilitating it to keep everybody on track, just to make sure that you stay under that 15-minute time limit. And then if anybody has, anything that they need help with, or if there's anything that, team members need to talk about that comes out of that discussion, you have them like deal with it like immediately, like after the meeting, so it doesn't take up everybody's time. Then, as the team is like actually like working through projects, you would most likely use something that's called a Kanban board or a Kanban board, which basically there's like different like apps and services that you can create Kanban boards with. Coschedule supports like Kanban. Trello is also a really popular option. Where basically it's just like you have like different columns that all represent like different like phases of your project. So it might be like ideation, execution, review, publish, or like something like that. Just like phases that kind of guide that project from start to finish.
Yeah.
And then within each column, you'll just have like a card for like each project or for each task, to just like visually indicate where it is, like in terms of like the greater workflow. And then as you progress, you just kind of like move those pieces left to right from start to finish. So it just kind of like helps you visualize your workflow and helps you visualize everything that the team's working on. That also helps everybody kind of like stay on the same page. So nothing like takes anybody by surprise, or any of the other problems that can kind of arise when you don't really have that kind of transparency. You can also do this with like a physical like whiteboard. Like sometimes like they'll put up like masking tape on a wall or something, and you'll have like actual physical note cards for managing that too. And something else that is important to understand with Agile marketing teams is that in your stand-ups and in your teams, those teams are the term that's used is cross-functional.
I saw it.
Yeah. What that means is you have different people, even if they belong to like different like departments or different like teams within your company. Like if they're working on a project, they're on one, like considered part of like one team. So you might have like a writer, a designer, strategist, a developer, an analytics person, or whatever the case may be, like for the project, like all working together.
Yeah.
It helps you break down silos between different departments within your company. So it's not like this team does step one and then they hand it off to the next team and just tell them good luck.
Yeah. Can I interrupt you for a second? So I know that many of my friends joining us live right now, And so thank you so much for being here, everyone. And our kind of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or maybe even small business owners who have a very small team. So do you think this process, what you just discussed so far, can also be applied to those people who kind of like have a very small team, or they are their own team?
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting question, because Agile is definitely kind of structured around the idea of working with a team. And so I think that's a really good question to think on, because when Coschedule started, like, it was only a few people.
Yeah.
But Coschedule has been Agile since day one.
Wow.
By virtue of being like a software company, and that's kind of like the background that one of our co-founders had, was from the software world, and so it's just natural to kind of like work that way. But I would say that even if you are you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner, you know, you probably still have other people that you're going to have to work with or collaborate with on.
That's definitely true. Many of us, we have probably VAs, and yes, totally, yeah.
So you might have like you might have like a VA, or maybe you're working on a project where like you're working with an outside vendor to build a website, or maybe if you're like really small, like your office manager is also your marketer, who is also your accountant, or whatever the case may be. So I would say that like you could definitely still apply the principles of Agile with that team. But the scale might be really small, and maybe like some of the specifics of like the way that you operate will change. But something that's like really great about Agile is that you don't have to necessarily do things one certain way just because someone else told you to.
I love it.
So what a lot of even like with like what a lot of Agile marketing teams will do is they'll kind of take the basic concepts and adapt it to their own circumstances. Or just, you know, kind of use it as a starting point, and then yeah, you know, just like adapt it to what makes the most sense for them.
Yeah, this is actually very interesting, and I think I'm getting more familiar with this concept based on what you shared with us so far. So how is this kind of different from the traditional, you know, inbound marketing or content marketing approach? So this is more like the way we work, right? It's more like a methodology. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, it's more about the way that you. Yeah, the way it's more about like how the how your marketing operations function. Because you could certainly apply Agile to like any type of marketing that you're doing. So like whether you're doing like content, social, inbound, it's really like what makes it Agile is the way that, you know, you're managing your workflows, the way that you're structuring your teams, the way that you're collaborating with one another. The way that it differs from traditional marketing, like really in any sense, like the biggest differentiator is that rather than coming up with like one static strategy, one or two really big campaigns, you're constantly like iterating on your ideas and like, you know, testing what you're doing, and making changes to your work and adjusting your strategy as you progress based on data and what is or isn't working. Whereas in a more traditional you know, way of working, you might just like write your strategy and just be like, we're sticking to the strategy no matter what. Like our job is to execute the strategy and to make the strategy work. Whereas in Agile, it'd be your strategy is where you start, but you're going to iterate on that strategy and do more of what works, you know, and just like allow yourself like the flexibility to just like experiment and, you know, to test things rather than just be.
This is very interesting. So I right now I'm sharing the screen of this Agile marketing workflow.
Yeah.
So do you mind kind of just quickly walk through this, and maybe if you can share an example that you guys at Coschedule have been using this approach to do your marketing, like kind of give us an example to walk through this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll see like in that first item there, there's the term backlog. And so with an agile marketing team, a backlog is basically like your repository of all your ideas and things that you might work on. Once you actually like identify like a project or something that you're going to execute, you would then plan out all the steps for that project in what's called a sprint. And a sprint is like it's usually a 2 to 4 week long period where you're going to get something done. So you can like take like a bigger thing and you break it down into like smaller chunks. And this is like one area where like agile marketing kind of deviates from like agile software development, because like if you were like a software developer, right, it's probably going to take you like a very long time, to like build your product. And so in that sense, it makes sense to like take like this big software project and then break it down into like those like 2 to 4 week like increments. With agile marketing, that might make sense if you have like a really large project, but you might be able to just like say like if you're running a blog, you just be like, we're just going to execute like this number of posts within this time frame or something like that.
Okay, so really focused, right? Just to focus on that thing within that period of time. It actually makes sense. That's kind of how I try to be productive. I schedule all of my meetings to kind of just one day. Today is my writing day. Today is my meeting day. So kind of like that, right? A little bit. Okay.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, really, like the idea is to get you to just kind of focus on like one thing for a fixed period of time, rather than kind of having all kinds of different things up in the air, and just getting them done when you get them done, basically. So basically, like you plan all that out, and then you would probably plan that out, in some type of project management or like work management software. And so, like at Coschedule, we use our own product for this, but there's lots of them out there. And then the team, executes like each stage in that project, and they're meeting each day, and their stand-ups, like discussing how things are going. So which is great, because then you don't have it keeps everybody like really tuned into how things are progressing. And if there are any snags or any hurdles or anything, it gets taken care of, rather than just getting swept under the rug. And then once that project is finally like it's out in the world and like it's shipped or like it's done, the team will then this is something I think it's not on the graphic, but I see there that we've got like the project's shipped. The team will meet in what is called a retrospective meeting, which is like a recap. You look back at what went well, what didn't go well, and what you think you could do better the next time. So you can celebrate your wins, own up to some of your mistakes, maybe. But then really kind of like give yourself like a clear idea of how you can improve. And then, the more that you do that and the more repetitions you get in, the more things that you start to identify that, you can do better. So you're constantly applying, like what you learn to, improve.
This is very interesting. It really helps me kind of think, because I'm kind of a solopreneur myself, but I do have someone here, someone there to work with me on different projects. So really, I think gives me a clear direction in terms of organizing my own projects, from the end, and then go back and break them into smaller chunks. And then kind of reflect on the journey. Very interesting. Yeah. So I wonder what are some unique challenges of applying this approach compared to some other approaches?
For sure. So I think, honestly, the biggest challenge to being successful with agile marketing is just getting started. And the reason for that really doesn't have much to do with agile marketing itself, and more to do with just the fact that it can be really, really hard to shake up the status quo, within an organization. Particularly if you work in like a more traditional type company, or maybe like a company that's a little bit more set in its ways. It might be a little bit easier, like if you're in like a startup or like a technology type company, or if you're like a solopreneur, entrepreneur, where like you have control or say so over like what you're doing. But I would say that just the hardest thing is just getting past like initial skepticism when people just don't want to change.
Yeah.
And
that
so,
is hard. Yeah.
yeah, right. And that's hard with like getting like any kind of like business change or anything like that, done.
Yeah.
So like the two things, or like two things that you can do to kind of brace yourself for that, though, or just to kind of when you want to like bring up like the idea of adopting like agile processes. One thing that can help you make your case is to just share some data, like do your research and like just come equipped with like some hard numbers to like kind of help build the case. We did some research at Coschedule, and this, I believe, I believe that this has been a while. Like I wrote that guide. It's been a while since I read through it. But we've done research at Coschedule where.
Oh yeah, I remember. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, I remember that research. I think you mentioned like 225% increase in terms of being more successful with your marketing effort, right?
Yeah. So like that's a pretty significant number.
Here.
Yes. Yep.
So I will make sure everyone to. Sorry, I always interrupt you. So I will make sure to share the link. And I actually read through this article, which is pretty comprehensive. Is the marketing management strategy statistics stuff that you need to know in 2019. So this one, great,
And that was something that was really interesting for us, even to actually, survey like actual, marketers and crunch the data and actually like quantify, the benefits of agile marketing. We also partnered with Andrea Freirier at Agile Sherpas. They're like a consultancy. And they did some incredible research because like agile marketing is like their bread and butter. You're like
actually, it reminds me of a few podcast interviews that I listened to. They were talking about this and how this method has helped people become more profitable and more productive. And actually here, one of my questions for you was like, can this be applied to like solo entrepreneurs? It is very interesting. Look, and 42% like small teams, right? Kind of cool. Yeah. So very interesting.
Yeah. So there's still certainly like ways to make it work for sure.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah. So I will definitely share this article in the comment section, and maybe we can also take some questions from the live audience if you don't mind, Ben.
Yeah.
So we do have a few questions. So the first question is from my friend Lori. Thank you for asking. So she asked if you can share the top 3 things that were implemented to create such great change at Coschedule using agile marketing.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of like, so like a lot of like the processes were kind of put into place, like the core of it was kind of put into place before I started, but it's definitely like evolved over time. So I would say like the biggest thing is really the number one thing is probably having like those stand-ups and just like structuring our teams the way that we do, just to make sure that it's really easy for people to communicate and to collaborate, just so like knowledge and communication around projects doesn't, get siloed away or partitioned off from people who, just like need basic information about things. And that's also something that like when our own like customer success managers have talked with like customers and have tried to like help them, like adopt more agile processes or just to help them be more efficient with how they work. That's something that we've been told is like, if you go from like not having those meetings or really like meeting face to face much at all to like doing something as simple as that, like even just like meeting like once a week or a few times a week, they've told us that that's just transformative for them. Like even just taking a small, like a step like that small even. I would say the second thing is just keeping our review steps and like our approval processes within our workflows just down to a minimum. Like we don't want to put more process into place than what is actually functional. And so we've eliminated as much friction that way as we possibly can without sacrificing the quality of our work.
Yeah.
Which has helped us like really like move like really quickly. And that was really important in the early days too. Probably like especially going back like before I had started here, just because, you know, the company was like, when you're a small team and you've got a big goal, some of the more traditional ways of doing marketing can, like, frankly, they can just be too slow. You just need to build up the momentum that you need quickly enough. I've had to say a third thing is probably just like as we've grown our team over time, because our marketing team is much larger now than it was when it was just one person, you know, in 2014.
How large is it now? How many people do you guys have in the marketing team?
I think there's about 8 of us currently.
Okay.
That are all in like a marketing role in some capacity that are on the team. As we've scaled the team, we've really kind of held true to the you know, the Agile principles that have really like served us well, but we haven't really handcuffed ourselves to like ways that we would have done things before if we can find a better way of doing things. And so something that's great about Agile is that it's flexible enough that it allows you to kind of like iterate and make improvements over time. You know, it shouldn't be considered like a rule book that like you have to do things a certain way. And so I think that being mindful of that as we scale the team, like kind of keeping like the spirit of those processes going and not losing sight of that, but with not being like super bureaucratic about being Agile purists, I think is really, I think it's really benefited us a lot from my perspective.
Yeah. So this is very interesting, and I saw some people's comments. People are actually interested in learning more about this. And so here's another question from my friend Tim, and he asked if this is only for large companies. I think he was talking about Walmart. And then kind of follow-up question, is this what Walmart does and having meetings standing up in the store? So is this like only for large companies? But I don't think so, right? So you kind of mentioned that also for small teams.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not only for large companies. I really think that like any company of any size that's doing marketing can make use of this. And even if it doesn't necessarily make sense, maybe in your own circumstance, to do everything, there are definitely some basic principles that you can apply that, you know, will definitely, like I'm confident would be beneficial. And you even could see like, you know, in that where we got that statistic of, you know, marketing teams or like marketers that are applying Agile, that 252% more successful statistic, I believe, was filtered down to those who reported being on a team, meaning like they're on a team of at least 2 people rather than people who are just working on their own. But like we mentioned before too, like even if you are working on your, like you're like a solopreneur, if you're collaborating with someone.
That's right.
So, I would say that I think that marketers in any organization of any size can find something in it that will help them drive, you know, some, you know, appreciable benefits for sure. It's not just for Walmart.
I love that question. So thank you for asking that question, Tim. And here's another question. from my friend Mario, and I don't think it's exactly related to agile marketing, but if you don't mind answering, if you have any tips for figuring out the type of content and topics our target market is most interested in. So I think this question might be a question that many people are interested in. So if you have any tips, content strategy, I know you do that to share with us.
For sure. Like, this is probably one of the most common questions that I hear, and I think but that question is like, it's deceptively complicated though. Like, the answer gets complex like pretty quickly. But what I would say is, like, like a basic, like content marketing principle is the topics that are most likely going to be the most successful for you are going to be the ones that are most closely tied to whatever pain point it is that your product or your service solves. So there's a bunch of different ways that I would go about trying to identify what those are. One would just be straight up just talking to your customers about what kinds of things they're experiencing and what kinds of things they need help with most. And if you can't get that information yourself, like say, like if you work like in a large company and you're in the marketing department and you don't really have the ability to actually like go out and talk to people directly, you might be able to like run some type of survey. You could talk to like your customer success or your customer service teams or something like that. Just any way that you can get information about what kinds of things your customers like are wanting from you. Because like, and if you ask, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Also, if you take an SEO approach, just like keyword research, just do as much research as you can on topics that are like related to like your product or your service or your industry, and just build up just like giant like spreadsheets full of like keywords, topics, ideas, and then the search volumes and difficulty, and the things that you find that people are looking for the most are probably going to be the questions that people have most commonly. But sometimes the biggest problems that people have are things that people don't know how to put into words.
Oh, amen. Yes.
And so so sometimes like that keyword data might not necessarily guide you toward what people's actual problems are, but if you can kind of pair that with actual, like your customer's own language, their own words telling you like, this is what's really hard for me right now. It'd be great if you could help me solve this. That can be really huge, especially if you're able to bring those two things together. And then also it's like social media, just like social listening, just
that's right.
Follow all kinds of news sources and like thought leaders within whatever industry or niche it is that you serve. Like no matter what industry you're in, like literally no matter what, someone is considered like a thought leader.
That's right.
Someone's creating news or creating content within that niche. And even if it's really small, even if you think it's too narrow or too boring or too weird or whatever, it's not to somebody. Like everything is important to someone. Especially if you're in business, obviously, like you've got people buying your product. Those people need content from you too.
That's right. Yeah, actually, that's a question I'm also curious. And I know many of you guys are in social media, digital marketing. We have about 50 people join us live right now. So let me know in the comment section, what is your specific industry that you are working within? And so I also kind of just to follow up on the question that my friend asked. So I also struggle with this. So there's one blog article that I enjoy. It's from HubSpot. I hope you don't mind me sharing.
No. Coschedule, actually, we integrate with HubSpot. So
yeah, so I really love this approach. So you see how they have kind of a core topic. That's now I start to brainstorm topics and use my own content calendar. So this is my core topic. From this core topic, kind of branches out to some other subtopics that I can talk about. So this way it gives me some structure to think about, because I definitely struggle with like what to talk about. So on top of asking people in your community, I think might be another way to kind of organize the answers that you gathered from your community. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up too, because I think like this is the next step. Like, like once you have like your topics and ideas, even like that Agile marketing guide that you had referenced earlier follows this approach, like this topic approach, where the topic itself is too big to fit into one piece. So like we broke it up into chapters, and so we have like multiple pages that are all kind of around like that one hub.
Yeah, like
I think. Yeah. I can attest to that working really well. And like the way that you apply it, that post from HubSpot is a really good guide if anybody wants to know more about how topic clusters work. But basically, like you've got like your main topic, like the primary, like overarching topic, and then just like lots of different pieces kind of spoked off of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like for me, I can share my personal experience with everyone. So I'm actually getting ready for a big launch, which is a 2-week immersion program in Singapore to cultivate students' entrepreneurship. So my central topic is education, mainly how education is not serving our students for the 21st century. So that is my big topic. I actually branches out into smaller topics, talking about social media, digital literacy, emotional intelligence. So I really love this kind of approach. Yeah, and you also mentioned social listening. You really listen to people and hear what they are talking about in terms of this specific topic, and then go that way. And another one I use is answer the public, I think. Yeah. So I hope this answers that question. And so here's another question from my friend Krista, and she's asking if Coschedule has any solutions for remote teams. I love this question because I work remotely all the time.
So if you mean like solutions in terms of, like software products, I know that our product is well equipped to help, remote teams, work together and collaborate. But as far as like anything that is explicitly labeled, packaged, and marketed as being like a remote solution, not as such, or like maybe not quite in the way that question might like be like leading one to think, but that is a really interesting thing to think about for us for sure. But I will say, like, I would certainly encourage you to check out the product that we're able to offer. If having just like one place, like organize like your work with a remote team is what you need. Something like Coschedule combined with like Slack would probably be really powerful for you. But that's interesting to know that there may be some interest there in maybe seeing what we could. I mean, I have no idea where it might go, but just it's good to know that like there's interest there for remote teams for sure.
So at Coschedule, is everyone working in person, or do you guys also have remote teams?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have 2 offices in Bismarck and Fargo, North Dakota. And so we do a lot of collaborating between the 2 offices, and it really feels pretty seamless, whichever office you happen to be working out of. And the software definitely helps us with that a lot. So does like teleconferencing and Slack. I would say those 3 things together kind of what make it possible for us to make that work.
Yeah. We don't have much time left. I really want to ask you another question that I personally very interested in learning more about, which is automation. So some of my friends in social media, in digital marketing, they automate everything. And some of them like, oh, the more you do, you are also going to lose that human touch, right? So we're talking about, I love Mark Schaefer's book. He's talking about being more human. So like, what's your approach to this, or maybe at Coschedule, how do you guys approach automation to kind of streamline social media process? Like, if you can share with us, that'd be great. Some do's, don'ts, how do we do this? Yeah.
For sure. It's a really timely question because we're kind of going through at least as it pertains to social media, we're kind of going through a phase right now where we're just shaking everything up in terms of how we approach social media marketing and just really and I bring that up because my answer to this question could change tomorrow.
Love it.
So I will say that like in the past, like we've really approached social media automation as being a mechanism for distributing content. And also like we do a pretty good job about like interacting with with our followers on social, but we've really thought about it very much from like a publisher perspective and maybe not enough from like a product perspective. So things are going to change quite a bit, but automation really makes it possible to produce a lot of content and to kind of like keep all those feeds. Like it's really the only way to keep all of our feeds as active as what we need them to be. And also, we lean pretty heavily on, we have a product in Coschedule called Requeue that makes you, so like what it does is it enables you to like reshare, like posts. And it gives you some control over like how often and when and like what it'll reshare. But that's been really that's huge, for us and for a lot of our customers, because if you have, a piece or a campaign, that's just that like really takes off. It just makes it so effortless to make sure that like your best stuff is just continually getting in front of people.
Yeah.
And then with like content, we use Coschedule, and I use Coschedule pretty heavily to manage our blog publishing. So I can just set something to publish and I don't have to worry about it. And I can have a dozen posts at a time, for 3 or 4 weeks at a stretch. And I can leave the office knowing that they're going to get published.
It's actually like reassuring to know that you guys are doing this, because based on the rumor I heard, some people were saying that if like you schedule content, the content doesn't perform as well as you post this real time in person natively through whatever app that you're using. So is that true or not true?
To the best of my knowledge, mechanically, I don't think that there's anything going on to where a social network would demote content that's created through or scheduled through a third-party app. And I think that Buffer did some research on that pretty recently. I actually think they've done quite a bit of research over the years that might be worth looking up, or they actually tested it. But I've heard that quite a bit too, and I don't know if this theory really holds water, but I've had this theory for a while where I kind of wonder if automation, if you're not careful, sometimes it encourages bad habits, or the reason why people see a decline is because they're just either just like using automation to like share things too much, or to share the same things too much, or if it just kind of creates like the mindset that like social media is easy, and therefore you don't really like put as much time into like actually crafting your copy, or like actually like developing a thoughtful campaign, or really being strategic about having like making sure like your messaging is actually tied to the core brand strategy. So I think that like automation is powerful, and it's necessary. Like I will advocate for social media automation all day, every day. But with that in mind, I think it shouldn't be treated like a crutch. Like your content is going to succeed or fail based on its merits.
That's so true. That so reminds me of last week we had one of my dear friend Mario to come here to discuss podcasting. So I remember one person asked this question: is it too late to start podcasting? And I really love Mario's response. He was like, nothing is too late if you make sure the quality is good. So I just love that so much. So yeah, so I think yeah, exactly. If you make sure that the quality is good, if you become so lazy, I notice sometimes if I schedule content, I just forget about it and I don't really engage with people when people are actually engaging with me regarding that piece of content. So yeah, this is in balance, everything in good balance. Yeah. So like, what do you think is another big thing that is kind of coming up, trending in social media, in digital marketing that we should, as entrepreneurs, digital marketers, that we should pay attention to?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it's also a really big question that like I'm slightly hesitant
To answer.
to predict what the next big thing will be, because I think I have a feeling that whatever the next big thing ends up being is going to be something that we're not going to see coming until it happens, and then when it does, it's going to seem really obvious. But one thing that I think is interesting, and like if I have to make a prediction, that I think that the next big thing might be for marketers. Maybe it's not a big thing, but maybe like it could become an emerging trend of the focus on social media switching more heavily to email newsletters. And the reason why I think this is because I don't see this much in like the marketing space yet, and not so much in the it's not something I really see like brands doing or individuals doing on behalf of brands. But what I see with like a lot of like writers, like journalists, bloggers, just general like content creators, is a lot of there's a lot of activity around people just starting like their own newsletter, or even using something like Substack to try to monetize newsletters. And the reason for that is because it's so much harder for them to get heard and to kind of cut through the noise on social and actually build a following that way. Whereas with email, like it's so personal, you know, like when you're reading like an email, like a really thoughtful like newsletter, like you really feel like you're having a one-on-one conversation with this person. And so it's a really good way to like connect with people and to like share more value and have a more meaningful connection, to hold people's attention longer than what you can with social sometimes, unless you're doing something like this, where like we're having like an hour conversation. But so I think this is kind of like tied into the same idea of like the value of the interaction rather than just the volume of it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And so I've thought about this in like the way it would be really interesting, because you know, like employee advocacy is not a new concept, you know, of like, you know, you're having like your like people who work within your company being advocates for your brand on social, like on Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth. I am curious. I'll be curious to see if anybody kind of takes on this idea of those like thought leaders within the company, like your brand advocates, not only being active on social, but also starting their own personal newsletters that are independent from anything that company is producing. Just because if they can build up themselves as a thought leader, and it's like, oh, well, this person's awesome, they're super smart, oh, and they work for company A, B, or C, that could be really powerful, especially if you're using social to build up the awareness for that newsletter. Once you have somebody, once you've got someone on your list, as long as you can keep providing value, that's huge, because you've got way more of their attention now.
Oh my God. I love this comment. I love it. I so agree, because I work in higher education, and I think we have way too many educators who are just educators. We need educators who are also practitioners. But I'm not sure about in the industry how many people are also walking the talk, right? Let's say that you do content marketing for brands, for other people. Like, can you do this for yourself? So I think this is very interesting question, approach. And I think in the future, I'm not sure about in the industry, I think my prediction in higher education is when students are taking classes, they are not only going to look at the rank, the reputation of a school, but also look at specific teachers. So to that end, I think teachers need to build their personal brands. But
sure.
I think it'll be really interesting to see how people in the industry actually approach this. I love that question. Yeah, and everyone in the comment, we have like 50 plus people with us right now. So
Mhm.
let us know what you think about this. I'm really interested to reading everybody's response. So yeah, this
Mhm.
is great. Yeah, we have been here for an hour. Thank you so much, Ben. And finally, and share with us where can people learn more about you, and so which is a good platform to connect with you.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Ben underscore Coschedule. Or you can, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So you can feel free to connect with me on, LinkedIn or Twitter.
Awesome.
And yeah, and then I publish pretty frequently on the Coschedule blog too.
Yeah.
So you can keep up with that as well.
You guys, first of all, I love Coschedule. I love reading your blogs, and you guys should definitely follow Ben. He's a great writer, long, really thoughtful, in-depth articles. So yeah, this is really great, and thank you for joining us. So before everybody leaves, and I just want to share with you next week, I will actually be doing my interview in Singapore. Oh my God! And so I will have Kathy to join us live, and topic is to be determined. I do everything last minute, just to be honest with you guys. Solopreneur here. So if you are interested and follow me on social media, I share announced topics ahead of time. So and Kathy is really amazing, and I saw her speak in person. So definitely join us next week, Wednesday, same time, and same location. And make sure you guys follow CoSchedule and follow Ben. Thank you so much again for joining us live, Ben, and everyone in the live audience. Thank you so much for being here with us. See you guys next week. Bye.